So much, Representative Raskin. And once again, it looks like we need to school our colleagues in the Constitution, and I thank you for consistently doing that. And now it's a great honor to yield time to the Dean of the Congressional Delegation, a champion for women and families and paid leave and health care across our country, Representative Rosa DeLauro.
Thank you very much. I am so honored to join my colleagues here tonight, and I thank the gentlelady for taking the lead in this effort. And there really is such an urgency to this debate and to what we're happening on the floor of this House. I rise to voice my opposition to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. But the urgency of the debate is because tomorrow, in this chamber, in the People's House, House Republicans are prepared to vote on a health care plan which is supported by President Trump and by Speaker Paul Ryan. What is at stake in this vote tomorrow on this House? What happens to people in this country with this vote tomorrow? There is real clarity here. We will see families, all of you, pay higher premiums and higher deductibles. This plan will increase out-of-pocket costs to working Americans. There, in addition to that, to older Americans, they will be faced with what has been described as an age tax. Those Americans who are 50 to 64 years old will pay premiums 5 times higher than what others pay for health coverage, no matter how healthy they are. There will be less coverage because we are going to take away health care for 24 million hardworking Americans. And for older Americans, once again, something that they rely on in terms of health care coverage is what happens to Medicare. Well, Medicare and the trust fund for Medicare will have a shortened life by 2 or 3 years because it takes $170 billion from the Medicare trust fund. To do what? What does all of this mean? Who benefits from this legislation that my Republican colleagues want to pass tomorrow and who are strong-arming their own members to vote for it? Who benefits? Don't take my word for it, but the Joint Tax Committee, the Joint Committee on Taxation, estimates that 2 of the tax breaks in the repeal bill will give a $275 billion tax cut to individuals with incomes over $200,000, $190 billion in tax cuts for insurance companies, for drug companies who are making a fortune, for medical device manufacturers who are making a fortune. And so what is the balance? It is working Americans, older Americans, who are going to pay increased costs for premiums and deductibles, and the wealthiest corporations and individuals are going to get a $600 billion in a tax cut. I'll make one final comment, because this is where the values of this nation come into play. And when you think about a young woman in my district, Nikisha Whitaker, she's 36 years old. She has an autoimmune disease known as scleroderma. She cannot breathe without oxygen. She cannot work any longer at 36 years old. And what she says to me is, without the Affordable Care Act, each day is one day less in her life. We cannot let the Nikisha Whitakers all over this nation, we cannot let them down in order to be able to take care of tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and increase the costs to working Americans and older Americans. We have an opportunity to say no tomorrow and defeat this Republican health care plan supported by the President and the Speaker of this House, which will only do great damage to the health care of the people of this great nation. I yield back, and I thank the gentlelady.
Thank you so much to my good colleague from Connecticut for that incredibly compelling testimony of why we cannot let this bill pass.